like this already. What's up, everybody? My name is CoalFire, and welcome to A Case of Distrust. Now, this is by Serenity Forge, which, if I remember correctly, also made Loving Life, which I watched a playthrough of by Malice Diary a couple weeks ago, and was really intrigued by it. So, from what I understand, this is like old school detective, I want to say like noir, but I thought the art style looked absolutely amazing, and I wanted to check it out for myself. This is the showcase demo, so this is not the full game, but let's just go. Ooh. I awoke in my desk chair. Across from me were his piercing amber eyes. They surprised me at first, but I should have known he'd be there. I stretched and said mid-yawn, "Not very nice to sneak into a sleeping woman's apartment," but his stare just continued. "Alright, I'm a woman." I don't know what voice I'm gonna give her then. If she's the protagonist, I might just continue with this. I'm gonna be a I don't know, cross-dresser, I guess. I laughed at his glare. I had seen San Francisco's shrewd thugs, hardened cops, and deadly politicians, but none could ever match that gaze. Ooh. I knew I didn't have what he wanted. Reaching into my coat, I took out my knife and flicked it open. I held the knife steady, while staring back at him. "Look," I said, nodding towards the desk. "That's all there is. Take it or leave it. But a detective knows when she's beat. And I knew then. He wanted to search the place. And that's what he would do." I sighed, knowing my weakness for his type. "Alright," I said. "Let's look." Oh, it's a cat. He let out a gleeful meow in victory. I cut a piece of my apple that the cat had rejected. Always the sore winner, I jabbed, but I was smiling too, because I was telling the truth. There was absolutely no other food in my apartment. The cat often dropped by to scavenge. He made a lot of noise when he thought I was holding out on him, but right now the place was clean empty. No food anywhere. I had to prove it to him. Oh, I love that we're negotiating with a cat. That lamp had belonged to my Uncle Lewis. He'd been an SFPD officer, the one who argued policewomen could be good detectives, even while the others jeered at me. I knew he'd been right, but my current workload didn't help that claim. I tried not to think about Lewis. I was lousy at handling the emotions behind those thoughts. What else can we look at? Kitty cat? Do I smoke? Packaged cigarettes were the latest trend, but I still preferred to roll my own. The ashtray was evidence that it was a practiced skill. I suppose I had a lot of free time back then. There's a hawk down here. I kept a small statue underneath the side table. It had been police evidence in a crime, and its owner hadn't wanted it back. I took a shine to it, so I snagged it for myself on the way out of the department. Is that legal? Even when the case is over and done with? My old notebook, no, filled to the brim. I wrote everything down, even the minor details. Never know what can be useful. The first half had my old cases, details from the beasts I used to walk with in my policewoman days. Of course, policewomen were forbidden from going on patrol, but Lewis often overlooked that rule. Telephone, what's this? A newspaper was flopped on the floor. Headline was about the death of Lenin, leader of the Red Menace sweeping Russia. It seemed the Bolsheviks had lost their head. The cat waltzed into my apartment a few years earlier. He kept coming back, though there was rarely a morsel to eat. He'd continue his loud meowing until I proved to him the place was empty of food. I talk to you? It doesn't matter how doe-eyed you are, cutie pie. We've got no food around, I told him. He licked his chops and looked at me. Apparently, he still didn't believe that. I needed to contradict him somehow, to show him something in the apartment that would prove it was empty of food. I guess we'll go back then. I went back into the apartment to search for clues that I could show to him. Can we come in here, maybe? Door? Oh. The regular white icebox, tinged yellow with age. Half blocked in the kitchen doorway. My income really kept much stocked in it, and right now it was empty. Can I show it to him then? Door. The door to the outside world. If I left now, though, the cat would start wailing so loud I'd get complaints from the neighbors. No, he needed convincing before I could leave. Cole, show the cat there's no food. Icebox. Okay. So this is all just for me to go through everything. Wow, looks like there's a lot more to this game. It's like a full detective visual novel with, I don't know, adventure game aspects? I don't know, I haven't played something like this before. I had taken copies of old murder cases from the SFPD records when I'd left. I loved reading through them, even though my own contributions were minimal at the time. I longed for those types of jobs. Truth was, any work was hard to find for a female detective. Alright, kitty cat. Yeah, we're gonna show you some evidence. Alright, come here, you. Contradict. Alright. Evidence. Icebox. Used to contradict. I opened up the icebox so the cat could see inside. Empty, I told him. The cat looked quizzically at the open door, then back at me. Sorry, fella, there's no grub in here for me either. He stared at me with eyes as disappointed as I felt. Those big yellows always got to my soul. Thoughts of my family filled my head. My sister, Muriel, had sent a letter with an update of her life in Chicago. She and her husband just purchased a new home outside the bluster of the city. Their 3 young children were looking forward to their move. I never told Muriel, and those letters I mostly ignored. At the time, her family was the last thing I'd wanted to read about. My sister had the ordinary lifestyle that I had rejected. I had wanted to save myself from the monotony of the traditional marriage, to prove that a woman could do more than her child-rearing duty. Not that I was helping advance that cause with the types of cases coming in my way. My mind spiraled into the usual series of questions. Had I even impacted the women's movement? Had I made any change on society at all? Was my plodding career worth losing traditional happiness? What was the point of the life I had chosen? A loud meow from the cat snapped me back to the moment. I took a deep breath and grinned back at him. I guess you can scram now, I said. No one's gonna come knocking with food for you, fella. Oh. There immediately came a banging on the front door, beyond a nuisance. This cat was psychic, too. You order out, I asked him? The doorway was the regrettably familiar face of Connor Green. His company churned my stomach. It might have been his bergamot perfume which hung around my nostrils like a lingering, unwanted guest, or that sordid smile which was forever plastered on his face. He stared at me through the doorway with a coy smile. Well, ain't you gonna invite me inside? I started closing the door, but he stuck out a foot to stop me. Hey now, he chided. Foul way to treat a customer, Malone. So that was his angle. Hiring me as a detective. I wondered what a bootlegger would need with a private eye, but he answered without my prompt. I'll make this quick. I can't take this to the hog house or the pigs would laugh me out. And other dicks just aren't as tempting. His grin widened. Though, I thought this was gonna be quick. Oh. Thought this was gonna be quick, I said, and started rolling a cigarette. It wasn't quick, and I had already rolled and lighted a second smoke when Green finally finished his story. I noted the important bits in my book. He had started with a letter, slipped under his door in a white envelope. The envelope had contained a single typewritten leaf, which he handed to me. It read, "End your game or we'll end you." It had no signature, instead ending with only a small scribble at the bottom right corner that resembled a black hand. Green had a lead on the new running scheme, a connection from Vancouver. He'd given a sample to Tiny Paul, the gangster who ran the Tin Spoon speakeasy for a mob boss, Jerry Ferry. They'd agreed to buy in for more. Green surmised the letter was about his rum running. He suspected Redstone Stable, another bootlegger, of sending the letter. He told me that the stable ran a barbershop during the day and gave me the address. Green needed to know who the threat was from. He'd get Paul's gang to deal with them and to continue his scheme to get rich. If I go snooping myself, he concluded, folks see I'm not trusting people. No trust leads to no customers. I need to play it low-key, which is where you come in. I raised an eyebrow and stared at him through the cigarette smoke. Something in his yarn was still twisted. He must have noticed my reticence, because he said, "You know, I worked closely with Lewis. I'm sure he'd want to protect me as much as any other victim." My uncle. I was still searching for answers. After his death, he'd been a man obsessed with helping victims and bringing justice to those beyond salvation. With that ethos, I never understood how he could have taken his own life. Those thoughts haunted me. I had quit the SFPD and started my own practice, taking his philosophy. Was Green worth my time? Would he be worth Lewis's? Green had tipped off my uncle in a few cases. I wondered if it was enough to warrant my protection. Before I could think past my headache, he threw a bill in my lap. Keep the C-note as a retainer. And don't worry about getting in touch. I'll find you later for a chat. He turned down the hallway and let him go. If he was willing to give me $100 with no commitment, I wouldn't stop him. I turned back to the apartment, still confused about the whole story. My headache wasn't helping either. Whenever I lacked clarity, a trip to the Southern Coffee was usually the cure. Okay, let's take a peek at our noteses real quick. He'd just given me a case that involved his bootlegging. I still wasn't sure if he'd be worth my time. I decided to head to the... Okay, so how do we go to the Southern Coffee? Door. I'd mounted a gold plate on the outside that read, PC Malone, Private Investigator. There was only one place I needed to go to clear my head. Southern Coffee. Southern Coffee was a basement dive. It wasn't modern, hip, or ever busy. It was my favorite place to down some paint. Especially in the company of the best bartender in the city. Oh my god, I love the art in this. I gave my address and slouched in the back seat of a taxi cab. I thought it was a good way to pass the journey. Might be able to chat with the driver. Why not? Let's talk with him. He was young, not a teenager, but not far off. The redness in his face and a mean scowl told me he was angry. Don't much like driving taxi cabs, I offered. He looked quizzically at me through the rear view before understanding what I meant. Nah, lady. I like doing it right enough. Just some bozo for you were here and giving me hell. As I look like a boy his daughter's going with. Went far off about how my generation was the ruin in America. That scumbag don't know jack. Sounds like you know more, I asked. I'm no genius, he replied. But you can't talk to anyone from the last century, they'll tear your ear off, just for being young. How'd they get so high, I wonder? Given the world in the 1890s like a smooth-running roadster. Then what did they do? Bash it on every carbon site? Their greed, their war, their politics. Now they give us a ruined clunker and the mad our manners when we grab the keys. Oh, I completely agree. I agreed with him. The Great War was the hardest fought, at home and abroad. I said, the old men put us there, had some nerve. He replied hotly, and after those years they tell us to get in line. It's a bum deal to me, sister. We're in the information age, and the news of the world is crap. They're just angry we can see their folly. The taxicab rolled to a stop. Anyhow, the driver said, thanks for letting me blow off some steam. Have a nice day, miss. I opened the door and stepped out. Ooh. Southern Coffee was an automat diner. Ethel Burgess, the lone waitress, was friendly to help with any inquiry. Of course, if you winked at her right, she'd show you the way to the downstairs toilet where Frankie played bathroom attendant. Ooh. Southern Coffee had a distinct feeling of home. The familiar smell of mold in that old basement was enough to put a grin on my face. What's up, Frankie? Frankie attended bar at Southern Coffee, though it wasn't his place. Never caught a whiff of the real owners. They trusted Frankie to do what he did best. Let's talk to him. I said, "Hello, Frankie." He was met with a smile and a grunt from Franklin Ernest Conway. He was a big fella, both wide and tall. Must have been a little over 50. He had a round head, kind brown eyes, and a cropped ring of gray hair encircling an otherwise bald scalp. His voice had a warm timbre that complemented the tobacco and whiskey smells of the speakeasy. I sat at the bar. "You got the spooks, PC?" he asked. "You're worn out as a catcher's mitt." I suppose my exhaustion showed. I won $100 for nothing, and I can't let it go. I told Frankie about the case, the threatening letter sent to Connor Green, how he assumed it was related to his bootlegging, and his suspicion of Redstone Stable. The story took longer than I'd wanted, Frankie showing genuine interest by asking many questions. When I finished, he threw me the whiskey sour he'd been stirring. I took a large gulp and gave a sigh as thanks. Well, Green's case is better than most of what you given, he said with some enthusiasm. At least it's not more than that adultery bunk. Sure, I replied, but I started with a goal in mind. What's the point in helping a man like Green? Frankie clicked his tongue on his teeth. Lawyer, priest, why does it matter? Let me ask you, are the clients you have now the types you want to help? I admitted they weren't. I told him that I wanted more from my detecting life. It could be that Green's case shoots your career forward, Malone. I sighed and stared down at my drink. But my daze was interrupted by the basement doors opening and then slamming shut. A small, blustering woman began marching towards me. She looked younger than 25, and she was a few inches shorter than my 5'6". I thought about her gray trench coat was too large for that small frame, which is when I realized it was exactly like the one that had belonged to Lewis. She hurled insults at me a while. All I could do was sit and take it until she ran out of gas and started breathing heavily. I set my drink on the bar and looked in her eyes. I inserted a hello. I'm Phyllis Malone. How can I help you? Accompanied by a smile as genuine as I could muster, and knocked her off balance. She stumbled over her next few words, and I added, and you are? The flame returned to her eye between clenched teeth, and she hissed, I'm the wife of that bum who sneaks into your bed. The cat? But humor wasn't her angle. She launched into another poetic stanza. And he's just left your sty this morning, she finally ended. And that's when I gathered she was Connor Green's wife. Miss Green, I'm a PI, not your homewrecker. And I don't think your husband, in this line of business, would want to bet a dick anyhow. Her look was pure incredulity. A woman? A woman in that line of work? She questioned. I don't believe it. I don't give a shit. You don't have to believe it, I told her. But now you know my story. I want to know yours. Why are you here, Miss Green? Between shouted obscenities, I understood part of the story. Apparently, she had seen her husband leave my apartment, and, distraught, she had followed me all the way to Frankie's basement to confront me. She ended her tirade with waterworks, the tears ruining whatever rouge she had on her face. Frankie, ever chivalrous to a dimpled girl, came around the bar and held her up. No, that's all right, Miss Green. Why don't I hail you a cab and send you back home? She agreed. They walked together up the stairs. When Frankie returned, I said to him, "You turned night real quick." He snorted a laugh. Ah, hell, we can't have that siren in here. With a torture yelling like that, every street bugger would have to come to her rescue. Miss Green is a torch singer? Well, I just learned she was Mrs. Connor Green just now. When she came in here, I'd only seen her as Lil Fanny, singing lead for the jazz band The Tin Spoon. The Tin Spoon, I said. Tiny Paul's joint? That's where Green is selling his liquor. Say, do you think that's where she met her husband? I laughed. You're the real sleuth, Frankie. He made a sarcastic bow. I shook my head. You telling me you escorted our little torture out just to avoid a bit of hot water? Frankie flushed and said, "What are you talking about, Malone?" I was never good with emotions, but it was plain that Frankie had instantly fallen for the girl. What more could you possibly want from Lil Fanny? She can't have anything to do with Green's mess. Contradict, I guess? Evidence? Statements. Following her husband. Suspected infidelity, singer at the Tin Spoon. I guess we'll do following her husband. Used to contradict. Miss Green followed her husband to my place, I said. Why would she do that? Frankie rolled his eyes. PC, if you were Green's wife, why would you trust him with anything? I'm sure he's always up to something. I shrugged and stood up from the bar stool. Huh? Oh, goodness. I think the demo said that it was, like, or the blurb on Game Jolt said it was about 10 minutes, but I'm about 30 minutes into this recording, but I think I'm going to leave this episode here. I absolutely love this art style, the music, the story seems really cool as well. Oh, man. I have no idea how much more there is to this, but I think I'm going to finish it in one more episode. We might be right near the end, but who knows. But hell yes, I really, really like this. If you guys want to check it out for yourself, the link is down in the description as always. But thank you so much for watching. My name is CoalFire, and I will see you next time.